You've faced battles most never fought, pain, struggle, adversity. But here, we use that as fuel. This is the Battle Harder podcast, where we motivate, educate, and inspire warriors of life, veterans, survivors, leaders. We share stories and strategies to turn pain into progress. Here's your host, Coach Rob. Let's lock in and battle harder.
What's up, guys? This is Coach Rob, host of the Battle Harder podcast, where I hope to motivate, educate, and inspire you to become the best version of yourself. I'm very excited for today's episode because veterans are my passion. You know, I love having veterans on the show so we can talk about the grind, the struggle, everything that goes on. And this is going to be a raw episode with a new friend of mine. Typically, I don't like Army guys, but he's okay. He's the founder of the Strategic Veteran podcast, and he also hosts Transition Talks. And this is what's awesome because he's bringing something to the forefront that I didn't think about. And the quote that he sent in before we get on the show was, "Your past doesn't disqualify you, it qualifies you. If you're in transition, then you're not broken, you're just rebuilding." So I'd like to welcome to the show Army veteran Adam Peters.
What's up, buddy?
Good to see you. That I just saw 5 minutes ago.
I know, and yesterday. Dude, we've been spending a lot of time together. This is awesome.
Hey, I'm okay with that, man. We can bro it out as much as needed. So
minus your shitty little I don't like Army guys.
Bro, you gotta have the jokes and camaraderie, right?
At least I wasn't a seaman.
Yeah, I know. I get that all the time.
It's all in fun, man. It's all with love.
And that's what the veteran community is about, guys. If you haven't been in the military, we rag on each other, but it's a sign of love and respect and camaraderie. So before we get into, like I say, the meat of the sandwich, so to speak, just give us a little background of who you are, what you do, and what's kind of going on right now with you.
Yeah, man. So I'm Adam Peters, as Rob just introduced. I was born and raised in southern Indiana on the farm towns. Joined the Army at 17, spent a year on the delayed entry program, shipped less than a month after to basic training. I'd spend 13 years every other year deployed. So I did 3 to Iraq, 1 to Afghanistan as an infantryman. And then in 2015, my whole world fell apart because I was a career guy and I was medically retired. So what am I doing now, man? A lot of things. Jack of all trades, master of none. Really, that's actually easier to answer now than it would have been a week ago. I have 3 main focuses in my life: veteran advocacy with the Strategic Veteran platform, so the personal brand on LinkedIn, the podcast, the free community called The Stronghold. You mentioned Transition Talks. That's kind of a weird little thing. You know, as long as I got a veteran who's in transition and wants to come on every Friday, we'll do a live on LinkedIn and we'll just give them the floor to, tell their side of what's going on in transition. Then I just partnered with the 2 people that facilitated my ayahuasca retreat 2 years ago when I was sent to La Medicina in Tarapoto, Peru. They've broken away from that retreat and started their own, and they asked me to come in and help them build a veteran pipeline to share transformational experiences. So I've got that going on. And then I just got a bunch of equity and then a CTO role in Allstate Technologies, which is an AI and automation company. And that's a huge passion of mine. So that's what I've got going on, brother.
That's quite a lot, and that's awesome and amazing because I think as veterans, we definitely need purpose and we need something that drives us to want to have a mission or an objective. So let's talk a little bit about the military career. What led you to get med separated and kind of what happened after that?
Yeah, man. So it was kind of, I told you 4 deployments as an infantry guy. That's pretty rough. I think I have close to 50 months deployed and four deployments. Yeah, so pretty rough. I've been to the worst places in the world, seen, all the worst shit. I'm not special by any means, but my 3rd deployment, I was medevac. I had shattered my foot. The Army, in all their infinite wisdom, wanted bodies, so I continued to patrol on it for about 6 months. So I ended up having 3 surgeries on that. That was kind of the beginning. Then I had a hernia, so I ended up having a surgery there. And then in Afghanistan, I ended up tearing the labrum in my shoulder and had 2 surgeries to fix that. And after the second one, went in for post-op, and he's like, "Look, man, he's like, you can't do this anymore. You can't be an infantryman. And so, um, I don't know how to think about this. I've wrestled with this pretty recently. In fact, I was given the opportunity by that surgeon. He would have done everything in his power to give me an MMRB, which in the Army is just a medical reclass. So I could have finished out my career in another job.
Gotcha.
However, for me, I was about to pin E7. And so, like, I'm pretty big into the leadership stuff. And, like, in my mind back then, what kind of leader would I have been in a new MOS as a senior non-commissioned officer who's supposed to know every kind of aspect of this job to teach young, soldiers? It just didn't. I told him no. I was like, I can't. That's not real leadership. That's a big problem with the Army. And so I chose to go through the med board and get out. And boy, was that rough, man, as you know, and I know, and so many other people know. And so, yeah, man, that's really what happened for me to get out.
So for the civilian community that may listen to this podcast, the one thing you don't understand or may not understand about the military, I would say a high, very, very, very high percentage of us, we get injured in some way. It's just the nature of the beast. It's the way it is. It's a very rough life, depending what kind of job you do, unless you're like sitting at a desk. And we had a story when I was on his podcast too, and similar aspect when I got med boarded. The military will do everything, and I mean literally everything short of making you Mr. Bionic to keep you in service, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, they want the body, they want the numbers. Retention is bad. It's not something where we can just lose and lose and lose soldiers and sailors and Marines and everything. But what we don't realize is when we're conditioned to just suck it up, and we're conditioned to not heal, and we're conditioned to be robotic, super soldier, Terminator, kill, 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 follow the mission till the day we die. And that's not the right answer. And we need to know better, and we need education on that. And we don't get education on that because, once again, they want to keep us in. And if you guys don't know my story, I got med separated as well. And same thing. The military said, you can't be a cop anymore. You can do something else. And I was like, but I don't want to do anything else. I'm a cop. And I had to make that tough decision to get out. So you got out. And when you got out of the military, like, what did you think about, like, as far as what were you going to do? Like, what happened? Like, what incidents took place after you got out of the military?
Yeah, man, I didn't have a fucking clue. Let's just be real. I mean, you're talking to a guy. This would have been my 22nd year. So this year, June 24th of this year, would have been my pre-planned retirement date. I knew that about myself. So my career was cut basically 10 years short, a little less than 10 years short. So I didn't know. I didn't have a plan. And back in 2015, when I was med boarded, that was a shit show of a process, right? So I spent pretty close to 18, 19 months going through that process. So there wasn't a traditional TAP program for me because, there's certain things that have to happen in order for you to, be recognized in the system to getting into some of these things. And, I'd say my last probably 8 months was, let me see if I can find the bottom of this bottle and solve all my problems. So that definitely isn't a help. I mean, how did it go for me, man? At some point I woke up a little bit and realized I couldn't keep drinking. So I quit drinking and really started to kind of like, shit or get off the pot, if you will, and like realize like I got to find a way to make money because all of this is going away. And I didn't know how much 100% actually was going to be and how long it was going to take for the VA to kick in once the Army pay stops and all of that. So I've always wanted to fly. I love, I remember being a kid, National Geographic had these little fold outs that went in like a 3-ring binder. Yeah, I'm dating myself right now.
I had them too.
I had literally every military jet or helicopter in a binder. They lined my walls as a kid. And in fact, so much so that when I was looking at joining the Army, I actually talked to the Navy and the Air Force first at the high school, and they laughed me out of the foyer because I wear glasses and I was never going to be a pilot. So that got amplified when you go to war, man, and you look up and there's Apache helicopters and Kyle Warriors and Chinooks and like that really went. So I even tried in the Army to put in a warrant packet, get PRK. Turns out my eyes are really fucking bad. So that was never going to happen for me. And I really didn't have a clue, man. I didn't really want to go to college when I got out. It's part of the reason I joined the Army is because I just don't like school, which is actually not true now. I think if you could give me an opportunity to go back to school, I would learn all kinds of cool stuff, way more focused though now. So what had happened, man, is I had looked at all the colleges in and around Olympia, Seattle, Washington, because that's where I got out, and nothing really spoke to me. But I did find out that I could go to flight school as a civilian as long as my vision was corrected to 20/20. I could get a medical and I could go to flight school. So that's what I did, man. I did everything I had to do, played all the fuck games that the FAA wanted to play, spent pretty close to $15,000 to get the medical just so I could start flight school. And here's the real kicker, man. I got my commercial license and I walked away from aviation. Went and got my bachelor's degree in business and psychology, and really kind of set out on the path to become an entrepreneur. That's really what happened, man. Flying is great. I love it. We can get into why I walked away if it's relevant or not, but it's something I will go back to in the future, just not right now.
So I want to know. So for once again, like I try to I'm explaining things for civilians because
I know that's on me, man. I'm sorry.
Breed. No, you're good. You're good. So for those you don't know, okay, the military across the board has what's called TAPS. Now I got out in 2007, and when I got out, and this is one thing that I like about having Adam on the show, because when people can advocate for veterans, or I guess when veterans can advocate for veterans, we have a better chance at getting shit done, and we have a better chance of making things better for the future veterans and the future veteran community, because there's things that just aren't spoken about, and there's things that just we don't talk about. And it's weird because you'd think you'd want to make things better for people, not keep things the same in like an old dinosaur kind of type of thinking. So TAPS is a class that's supposed to do this in SkillBridge is supposed to help you transition out of the military. Now, most of the time, because of us being partly knuckleheads and being in a career for so long that we don't know anything else, no one takes the time to actually figure out what we want to do. No one takes the time to talk to us about our personality, who we are, what we enjoy. There's no personal development aspect. It's like, oh, here's how you write a resume. And you're like, what the fuck do I need this for? So to the people that may not ever know or experience this, when we get out of the military, there's not a lot of things. They kind of just kick you in the ass and say, all right, have a nice life. And they like forget about you. When you got out, and like you said, you started feeling depressed and everything, how hard was it to find a community or a tribe that knew who you were and what you went through and how things kind of were as far as being in the military?
Man, to be honest, I wouldn't find that tribe until 8.5 years later when I started building it for myself. So that's how hard it was. And that is not to throw shade at the friend group I had. I was kind of a weirdo when I got to Washington State, ended up divorced from my first wife, whatever, neither here nor there. It's irrelevant. But I always kind of, my whole career, anywhere I went, and I was only at 2 duty stations, I did get around for training or whatever. I always made it a point not to make civilian friends, because really a big part of the appeal for joining the military for me was, back when I joined in 2003, I think you probably relate to this, I knew there was a really high likelihood that I was going to be PCS in every 2 or 3 years. And I really like that, because I don't like to be in one spot for too long. It's the same situation since I've been out. I move a lot, and I like to go new places and experience new things, and just kind of, I got the travel bug, man. And so, for me, I ended up making a bunch of civilian friends up there, so much so that I had more civilian friends and was hanging out with them more than I was the Army friends. And so that's a unique challenge in and of its own, because they don't understand.
Dark humor.
What I mean? Well, and no, that's not true. They have the same sense of dark humor that I do, or else they wouldn't be in my friend group. It's just, they can't relate to the experience, particularly like if you're talking about somebody who's getting out after 13 years. I had met them maybe a year before that, so they really only have a year around military. You know what I mean? Like just someone who had chosen to make this a career. So there's, kind of that dichotomy. They just can't relate to a lot of things. It's that way to this day. I talk in a lot of Army acronyms, which probably will never leave me. And when I'm talking to, that friend group up there, sometimes I have to explain certain things. However, we've been friends for over a decade at this point. And so, they've started to pick up on a lot of that stuff. So it was really hard. That's not diminishing anything that they did for me, because they are instrumental in probably, some way, shape, or form, making sure that I stayed alive and didn't kill myself. It's just, I don't think that they were in a position to really get to the root cause of anything or to be able to help me through that, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It just like, depending a lot of times too, when you get out or where you get out, the support system, once again, is super lacking. And it's a very scary place, because even if you have a wife, my first wife luckily was in the military, so she understood a little bit. But for most of us, when we get out, we don't have a sense of belonging. And we're not going to go to like a VFW usually, or something like that, because it's never been commercialized in a way that it would make it advantageous for us to go and talk to people. And so, like, trying to, and I think kind of with your stronghold and me with what I'm doing and everything, I think we're trying to change that. I want to change the narrative on veterans from, I guess, the inside out, from when they get out to having a place to go, whether it's virtual or not, and a forum to talk, and answers to the question of now what. Because for both of us, I think we lost our way, and it made us, overweight. It made us depressed. It made us angry. I still have resentment over the fact that I'll never get to retire. And I have friends and buddies that retire and they're getting fat retirement checks. And I'm like, well, fuck you. I wasn't given that opportunity. And it's not their fault. Yeah. It's just the way it is. So just like you, I had to say, what's my purpose? And I had to build too. And I had to create. And I think veterans can be very, very successful entrepreneurs because we are mission driven. You just have to find that purpose first of what you love and enjoy and what you want to do, and then reverse engineer and create off of that. So after everything that happened, let's go into the ayahuasca. Like, explain for someone that may not know kind of what it is, why you decided to do it, and I guess essentially what happened.
Yeah, man. So as far as what is ayahuasca? Ayahuasca is a cocktail between two plants. The ayahuasca vine, which contains an MAO inhibitor, which allows the DMT from the chacruna root to actually, give you very vivid, visions, have kind of an otherworldly experience. It's a psychedelic, and it's sometimes referred to as the mother of all psychedelics. I don't refer to it as Mother Aya. I just refer to it as ayahuasca. And I was cautioned by, some very smart people with a lot of experience with it to kind of start giving labels and stuff to it like that. However, how did I find it, man? A lot of things happened, right? So finished college, went and did the whole blueprint that TAP gives you, transition assistance program, for those listening, and what Rob just explained. But, their blueprint for you is basically leverage your education benefits, which I don't think is a bad idea. I just think that could be more focused. It's write this resume. You're a veteran. Congratulations. Everybody's going to want to hire you. You should have no problem getting a 6-figure job. That's the biggest lie. It's the biggest lie we've been fucking sold. It's fucking priming and setting you up for the biggest fucking letdown and failure of your life.
Definitely.
It's just simply not true. So I followed that blueprint, and I call it a false transition. And in my book that I'm writing, which will hopefully be out on Veterans Day, I talk about this ad nauseum, and I detail my entire experience with this so you can get a really broad overview of why I call it a false transition. But essentially, I call it a false transition because you do have a mission and you do have purpose, because TAP gave that to you in leveraging your GI Bill benefits. Well, if I wanted to do what I wanted to do in the aviation world, I had to go to flight school, which was 2 years to get the commercial license. There's some other things that you have to do afterwards that are kind of self-paced and kind of, depend on how much money you have to get them done, because the GI Bill won't cover them. And then, I wanted to do international private flight. So the way you're competitive in that, and to understand competitiveness in aviation, once you get to the airlines, everything's based on seniority, and you're given a number based on the date that you were hired. That's your seniority number forever. And then as the years go on, you climb the ladder. It works very similar to my knowledge, and I have not worked in the industry. I know for a fact that's how it works in the airlines, but in the private kind of space, think NetJets. If you've been watching TikTok, Amalfi Jets is one of my favorites right now. Those pilots work very similarly. It's just a lot more competitive because it's a pretty sweet gig. And so I knew I wanted to fly international private jets, so Global 6000, shit like that. And in order to do that, to make myself competitive, I was going to need the bachelor's degree. So, 4 years of school, I got a new mission. It's get this bachelor's degree because I thought what I wanted to do was fly private jets for billionaires. Turns out I burn out in flight school. Flight school was not at all what I thought it was going to be. I thought they were going to teach me how to fly an airplane and land it and get from point A to point B safely. And I was going to do a lot of long distance stuff. Turns out of your 250 hours, maybe 50 of them are cross country stuff. The other 200 in flight school are flying around in a box in the sky doing maneuvers, and it's miserable and I hate it. And I'm 6'3" at the time. I was still on my weight gain journey, if you will, which culminated at like somewhere between 320 and 310 pounds. So I was a big boy, and it's very cramped in there. I just didn't like it. I didn't like not just being able to use the machine the way that it was intended to be used. I didn't want to do the maneuvers. I understand why. I understand all of it. I'm not shitting on that. It just wasn't for me. I just wanted to be in the airplane and fly. So in order to finish my bachelor's degree, I used Voc Rehab. And I know we talked about this on my show. Voc Rehab's a great program as long as you get a good counselor. So I ended up going and getting the bachelor's degree. Part of Voc Rehab's thing, at least when I used it, when you get done and you graduate, they will give you extra money for 3 or 4 months while you're looking for your new career. And it works similarly to how unemployment works. Is you still have to apply to jobs. The only difference, as far as I could tell, with unemployment is with Voc Rehab, you can't refuse any interviews, and you have to kind of send them some stuff back and forth after you do an interview. So I did the thing, and I got sucked into the insurance world. Long story short, I was knocking doors, selling final expense to the poorest 1/3 of Americans. It was a soul-sucking, just soul crushing. I just hated it. And I was going broke because nobody taught me what I needed to know about how that world works. So fast forward, I went broke doing that. I pivoted to at-home health insurance. That didn't work out. I went to property and casualty insurance in an Allstate office. That also didn't work out. If you want to know why none of these things worked out, you'll just have to wait till the book comes out and read that. I'm not going to waste your time here today.
I would suspect, though, you weren't passionate about it. You didn't like it, right? I mean,
actually, I took the Allstate job because I was promised Series 6, 63, and Series 7. And I actually was passionate about learning how money works, managing money for other people, and the incredible wealth you can build in a career track like that. It didn't work out because the agent that owned the office was so lazy, he wouldn't even talk to the customers in his book of business. So, you can kind of deduce what that 8 months looked like. It was pretty miserable. And I was the only one in the office producing, literally the only agent in the office producing. And it culminated when he stiffed me right before Thanksgiving on about $6,000 worth of commission. Oof. So I was like, I'm out of here. I could have fought it through the insurance board and all that. It's not worth it. It's not worth my time and energy. I'm much happier now. So after that, my wife and I moved to Florida. I had asked her to give me 18 months to make something work with the insurance industry. We moved all the way from Washington State to South Carolina, and I wasn't able to do it. I failed. And so I gave her the option. We can go live wherever you want. She's like, I think we had been coming to Florida because I have family here. She liked Florida. She's like, let's go to Florida. I was like, sweet. I was going to go back to flight school and finish becoming an instructor so that I could, just bite the bullet and go ahead and, enter this as a career field. I've got this really high leverage skill. Let me just go do it. It's been, almost 3 years at this point since I've flown. Like maybe I'm over the burnout. And turns out I actually was. I went to FIT down here. I got into their summer CFI program, which was like 9 weeks long. And I actually learned a ton that I hadn't learned in flight school, and kind of felt rejuvenated about flying again. However, when I was in Washington State, they have a problem with tweakers, and a tweaker had broken into my house and stolen my flight bag. So, and some other stuff. But in that flight bag was my logbook, and that is everything to a pilot. So when I was a week away from the check ride to take my CFI check ride, the school has you fill out what's called an 8710, which is a petition to the FAA saying, hey, I want to take this check ride to earn my license in, whatever this is. A big part of that is all of the numbers from your logbook, and you cannot fudge any of those numbers. So I didn't have that old logbook, and it had been 3 years since I've flown, so I had no idea what I had put on my last 8710 for the commercial check ride to be able to cross-check. I just knew what I had been flying in that current school. So I had to write the FAA a handwritten letter, send it with a check for $2. Yes, a paper check in 2020. I guess this would have been 2022, end of 22, early 2023. And they sent me a letter back saying, we got your request. It's going to take us 4 to 6 months to send you that paperwork. And I was well, what do I do? So I ended up working probably one of the best jobs I've ever had. I went to the sod farms here in Vieira. I was cutting grass, and I was doing it for $1,000 a week after tax. And I had zero responsibility. It was put in headphones, get your responsibility, work from 7 to 3. We'll pay you $1,000 a week. And I was like, cool. Wow. So I was just like, I can ride this out until I get the numbers back from the FAA, and I'll go back to flight school. I'll finish, and everything will be great. I'll be making even more money teaching students how to fly and kind of back on track. Well, what happened is I get the numbers back, and the day before I'm supposed to go on my first flight in 6 months and get ready for this check ride, I tore my bicep tendon in my left arm. And that's relevant because if I wasn't any other check ride except for CFI, I could have taken the check ride. I would have been fine. I couldn't because when you take the CFI check ride, you fly in the right seat and you work the throttle with your left arm. Well, my left arm was in a cast at 90 degrees, so I can't really work a throttle with my left arm. I could have held the yoke and I could have done all the maneuvers with my left hand because I still had wrist movement. It doesn't take a lot of big movements to do what you need to do. So that was pretty much rock bottom for me, man. There's a little bit more stuff that goes into that, but it's not relevant for right now. And so I ended up having the surgery, and dude, I just all the way down to the bottom of that deep, dark depression hole. And I, shoving sugary baked goods in my down my throat. I can see, the weight gain, and I'm not doing anything but, vegging out on TV shows and movies and YouTube, meaningless YouTube, and just doing nothing. And something happened one night. I was just watching YouTube, and I had been listening to the Sean Ryan show while I was in the sod farm cutting grass. And he had talked a little bit about plant medicine. He had people on who had experiences with it. He talked about his experience with it. But what really hit me is he gave his wife his platform to interview him, and she got to kind of ask the questions from her perspective and talk about all the changes she had noticed in him from her perspective. And I was like, I was sold, and I immediately started pursuing it. And I got really discouraged, man, because I didn't have a lot of money like most of us. And these retreats, are upwards of $7,000 for a 1 week, 3 ceremony retreat. And I couldn't afford it. And I found that all the nonprofits that sponsor veterans to go, they don't cater to conventional forces, only to special operations forces. And so I really did get pretty discouraged. And then one day out of the blue, I think it was early April or end of March, I got an email back from Heroic Hearts Project, one that I don't even remember applying to. I don't remember that name at all, saying, hey, we want to do the intake for you to make sure you're a good fit for this and get you scheduled for a retreat at one of either our Mexico facility or our Peru facility. Can you meet with me tomorrow at 9 a.m.? I was like, yes, I can. Absolutely. And so from there, I answered all the questions. I passed the intake, said I was a good candidate for this. Where do you want to go? You want to go to Mexico or you want to go to Peru? I said, I want to go to Peru. I want the full experience. You know what I mean? And so July 2nd through the 7th of 2023 was my ayahuasca retreat. And that's the day that this version of Adam Peters was born. And it literally changed everything in my life, brother. From the level of work ethic I have now, to my relationship with food, to my internal monologue, to 100 pounds of weight loss, to my entrepreneurial spirit, and everything I've built, everything that, if you Google Adam Peters and you find it online, pretty much everything you're going to find now is a result of that ayahuasca experience.
Wow, that's amazing. And I want to backtrack just a little bit because, once again, I think it's important to highlight to the non-veteran community, when you guys think, right, when us veterans get out, a lot of times you think, oh, veterans, they get money, they get this, they get that, they're treated so well. We're not. We're treated like shit, okay? I'm in Voc Rehab, what he was talking about right now. Like, this, currently going to school is how Coach Rob makes money right now while I build this business. And I'm trying to get my major in communications because I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, I need communication to be able to talk to people. It makes sense. One problem with vocational rehab, they will not pay for you to go to school to start a business. They will not help you start a business. And that is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life, because if they would help veterans be entrepreneurs, not only would it create jobs, not only would veterans hire more veterans, it would do nothing but good. But for some stupid reason, their rules, the regulations, they're like, oh no, you can't own a business. So Coach Rob being Coach Rob was like, no, fuck that. I'll just use my degree to get something that I need. And so I'm in school for communications. But like Adam said, if you have a bad counselor, which I do, it is hell. It is hell to get anything done. It is hell to get paid on time. There's been multiple times where I've had bills due and I have not gotten paid on time because my counselor couldn't put the fucking numbers in or whatever. It's another broken program that needs to be fixed and needs to be looked at. And the problem is, most of the time, we have this overwhelming amount of veterans that need, once again, it's all about guidance. It's all about purpose. Veterans need guidance. They need purpose. They go into jobs like me. I was a cop. So what does Coach Rob do? I go, okay, I'm going to go be a cop. But then I didn't heal from my trauma. I didn't heal from my mental health. I didn't heal from everything I went through. And now on top of it, I'm compounding that by being a police officer and dealing with the worst of the people. And I'm coming home and I'm bringing that anger and that rage and that depression and that fuck my life. I hate this job. Why am I doing this? And multiple veterans are doing this every day in their life. And you want to know why veteran suicide is high and first responder suicide is high? This is why. Because there's not things that are being implemented to help us. So next time you run into a veteran, don't think that our lives are all peachy keen and we're living the toast of town and eating steak for dinner. No, a lot of us are struggling. A lot of us are in debt. A lot of us are homeless. And these are the things that Adam and I are trying to do to change things. And that's why I think ayahuasca is important now. I haven't been able to do it yet. That's something I do want to experience. But I think that's a valuable resource to help people heal. And that's something that you're working on. So if you want to talk about that, go for it, about how you're attempting to use that to heal veterans.
Yeah, man. So, again, that experience was super transformational. It's the most powerful experience I've ever had in my entire life. And, I often get asked, well, what did it do for you? I thought I was going to go down there to deal with the combat stuff, to deal with, kind of the horrors of war and some of that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm sure at some point I'll still have to deal with some of this stuff, but it actually turns out what I really had to go down there and deal with, and what we're finding that most people who engage with plant medicine and psychedelics end up dealing with, and the trauma that you hear about is usually largely childhood trauma. And, so I had to get over a lot of that stuff. And, what happened for me is we left that retreat and our cohort made some promises at the end of that retreat, kind of on the other side of the experience, to one another. And we have a Signal group chat for the cohort, and we're still in touch to this day, most of us anyway, the vast majority of us. And I use that as an accountability tool to hold up my end of the deal to the promises that I made for them. Well, Jonathan and Kaisa, my partners at Amakaya and the founders of Amakaya, they actually, were the facilitators with Heroic Hearts Project at La Medicina at that first retreat I went to. And they were a part of that chat. And Kaisa had been following everything that I had been doing for about 18 months after the retreat. And I'll never forget it, man. It was a random Saturday in early January. I was out mowing the grass, and I get a voice note from Jonathan on Signal. And I haven't heard from him since we left the retreat in Peru. And it's like a 3-minute voice note. So I kind of didn't think anything of it, just went back to mowing the grass, and I'll check this out when I get in the house and get cleaned up. And it turns out he said a lot of things in that 3 minutes or whatever. But the two big things that stuck out to me is he led the conversation off with, "Brother, I'm so sorry I haven't kept in better touch. I'm terrible with technology and keeping up with relationships. However, I want you to know I've watched your journey and Kaisa's watched your journey, and we think that you are the perfect antidote for how powerful ayahuasca can be. You embody all of that." The next thing he said was, "Kaisa and I have started our own retreat and left La Medicina, and we want your help to bring this to veterans, first responders, and their families. Please, send me a message back and when we can chat if you're interested or whatever." I dropped everything, man, and I sent him a voice note back and said, "Dude, I can meet with you this afternoon. I'm really excited to talk to you." And so that's how it all got started. So our intention is I'm leading the first cohort down there July 13th through the 19th. And I think we have 2 or 3 spots left. So anybody who's listening to this, reach out. There is cost associated with it right now, but our ultimate goal is to make this 100% free to the veteran, first responder, and their family members. So that's the goal we're driving at. I won't go into the behind the scenes details of what we have to do to make that happen. We have a solid plan in place, and we're actively executing on that plan right now. But that's the intention with it. The overall intention is plant medicine, psychedelics in general. It's not a secret, is becoming a trend. It's trending right now. It's getting a lot more traction, and you're starting to see a lot more retreats pop up in the United States. And I fundamentally do not agree with that. First of all, the medicine doesn't grow there. Second of all, the people who are administering the medicine do not go to the middle of the jungle for their entire lives and learn how to use this stuff. They weren't taught how to use this stuff. They didn't study this stuff at a level that the Shipibo people and others kind of where this stuff is native to. The Shipibo have been working with this stuff for, best we can tell, at minimum 2,000 years.
Oh, wow.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure it goes back even further than that, right? So our intention is to really be the plant medicine retreat for veterans, first responders, and their families, so that a veteran like me who's introduced to plant medicine or curious about it has a vetted resource that they can go to and know that, that $2,000 that you pay right now for a 7-day 3-ceremony retreat, you're going to have the best possible experience because we have thought of everything humanly possible to make sure that you have the best experience, from pre and post integration to making sure that we have a legit dieta and not some made up dieta that people don't know what the fuck they're talking about, to actual psychedelic integration coaches that will help you make sense of your journey before and after. And that's what a lot of these retreats in the United States are not doing. It's like, hey, let's go to the middle of the desert, let's take some fucking medicine and let's trip balls. And like, I just don't agree with that. And I know that's blanket statement, for a lot of retreats. I'm sure there's good ones in the United States. In fact, I am very close personal friends with people who go to these retreats in the United States and have wonderful experiences. I think the difference is they have previous ayahuasca experience. They also are certified psychedelic integration coaches. So they've invested in themselves to really understand what they're doing. And so that kind of gives you a vision to see if something is worthy of going to or not. And so, overall, man, I know what it did for me. I know how it changed my life and how powerful it can be when done the right way. And so that's what we're trying to do with Amakaya.
And that's amazing. And as we spoke before, I'm hoping to be on the other side of that, maybe for the healing after the fact kind of stuff. the personal development side of the house and making sure people do continue to heal after they do your treatment. And as soon as I get my passport in order, which I guess I need to get on that application, I will be right there. I think it's important that you're doing it in Peru, like you said, with people that's been studying this for a very, very long time. But there's just something more magical, I guess I'll say, about getting on a plane, going out of your comfort zone, and going to a place where you can focus on the healing as opposed to like just maybe flying to Texas or driving, down the street. And I like that you have the knowledge and education on that, because I did look at ayahuasca a long time ago when I was going through all my shit. And I was scared to pick anything because websites looked janky, things looked funky. Like, for me, I heard that Joe Rogan did, and I was like, oh shit, Joe Rogan tried this, and this is what he said happened, so I want to try it. And I didn't get that opportunity. But now you're building something that's more, I would say, educational and purposeful. So I want to commend you on that. That's amazing. I can't wait to see this and the cohorts and all this stuff. That's awesome. Was it after that you started taking, let's talk a little bit about the fitness, because we're both fitness guys. I mean, fitness is the main aspect of my coaching and what I do. Was it after that the fitness really started to come into play?
Yeah, for sure, man. So, like I said, from the time I got out November 2nd of 2015 to ultimately, we'll just take it all the way to July 7th of 2023. That was my weight gain journey. And, I was a solid 240, 250 pounds in the Army, and, past tape, all of that stuff, right? Like, probably not as lean as I could have been, but also, I was younger and probably had quite a bit of muscle mass, and, something I can't replicate now or whatever, right? Like it is what it is. And, it just, the drinking and everything else, you just start packing the pounds on over the years and you start lying to yourself. I know you've done the same thing, right? Like, we displayed the picture of the transformation on my podcast of me. So when that comes out, you guys will have to go check that out. You can see
Definitely.
that I'm not bullshitting you. I had the man boobs and the big gut, and I was still lying to myself, thinking, oh, you're not that out of shape. But, man, so, at the heaviest, I know I was 320, something like that. When I started actually tracking the day after I got home from Peru, I was 311 pounds. I think a lot of that had to do with the dieta that we were on, for the actual retreat. So I had already started the weight loss journey without knowing it. But what happened is, dude, I just got home and I just started walking. I can't explain why. I don't know why. I didn't plan it. I didn't say in my brain, like, I'm going to go exercise today. I just started walking, and it became a routine. And I started, maybe a mile and a half with the dogs every morning, kind of at a pretty good clip. And then it just evolved from there. Before I knew it, it was 2 miles, then 3 miles. And then before I knew it, it was 4.1 miles in 59 minutes. And I'm down 100 pounds, in that, I also kind of the education I got at the retreat in Peru about, thinking in terms of, biologically about our health and kind of biohacking, if you will. That word was never explicitly used, nor will it ever be used at an ayahuasca retreat. However, when you start talking about, if you think about the evolution of the human being, you think about our ancestors, did they have access to ice water? No, probably not, right? So why are we drinking ice water? It's actually not as good for your metabolism as we think that it is. Room temperature water is actually better. Learning about fruit, right? And like how we as human beings have genetically engineered fruit. So there is like a lot more sugar in fruit than there should be now. And our bodies don't know how to process that. Learning about sugar and added sugar and processed sugar and how that is actually as addictive and as much a poison as heroin. Wrap your head around it.
So
Like,
what's funny that you say that is I had a couple episodes back, if you go back on my channel, I had a lady that she helps people with eating disorders, and I was asking her about snack foods, right? And she told me, and I never even would have remotely thought of this. She said that snack foods were engineered chemically to create a bliss point. So they knew genetically exactly how much sugar, how much salt, how much shit to put in there so you can continue to eat and eat and eat and eat and want more and more and more. Like science, like not like, oh, let's just make this taste good. No, science, so you have to buy and eat more. So yeah, hearing that, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, man. And look, man, I fell a victim to it just like everybody else, man. My wife is an incredible cook. She's cooked for people on yachts. She can bake. There was always, weekly, every single night, 3-4 homemade chocolate chip cookies, cakes, brownies, whatever, uh, sh- you know, so I have to add, I'm a big proponent for intermittent fasting. That actually is probably the largest contributor to the weight falling off for me. However, I don't think, and you will never convince me that it's a fad diet. I've been fasting for almost 2 years straight, pretty long fasts, and the benefits far outweigh the consequences for me. I understand it's not for everybody, but if you can build that into your routine, and it's just like any other routine, start small. I didn't start fasting 20 hours a day. I didn't start, throwing 48-hour fasts in once a week. I started at probably 12 or 13 hours and would crank it up every now and again when it got easier. And so, I still to this day, it's a big staple in my life. It is one of those huge data points for me and in my routine. And so, it varies. I'm back in the gym. I'm lifting, obviously, like everybody can see it. I look pretty good for 40 years old. So I've had to adjust how I fast. I can't do as long a fast anymore because my body needs more. However, the fasting allows me that mechanism to control what I'm putting in my body. And, a lot of nutritionists are going to hate this, but it also allows me to cheat because part of my childhood trauma is food trauma, which is a very, very real thing. And I am the definition of a meat and potatoes guy. I don't eat a lot of foods. I eat no vegetables, virtually no fruit.
Same. We're same.
I am a meat and potatoes guy, and this is a big part of and an area of my life that I am going to do something really extreme about. However, fasting allows me to keep shoving pizza and burgers and steaks and potatoes and pasta in my mouth and allows me to eat the things that I want to eat. And my body doesn't just immediately convert them to sugar and store them as fat because my body's not getting all of that because I'm fasting. So like it just kind of balances it out. And again, I know nutritionists are going to hate that, but here's what I've learned about kind of biohacking and fitness and nutrition. It's very individualistic. So what works for me is not going to work for Rob Wheeler. It's not going to work for Joe Schmo who's listening to this show. It's not. It can be a guideline. It can be, an example of something that you can try and build into your own routine, but you are not going to have the same results that I had doing it the exact same way that I did because we are biologically different. Fundamentally at a metabolic level, we're different. And so, like I said, man, from there, once I was about 70 pounds down, I started reading about hormone replacement therapy and I went and got tested, found out my testosterone was like in the low, if you understand how testosterone works, when you wake up in the morning, it's as high as it's ever going to be. You get tested, that will drop over time. When I was tested first in the morning, fasted, I was at like, I think it was like 350 something. And they estimated that my numbers were falling into the low 200s, maybe even the high 100s by the end of the day, which explained a lot of the laziness, a lot of the fatigue, a lot of the mid-afternoon crashes where I had no more energy and I was just sapped for the entire day. So I started on testosterone replacement and pretty immediately felt like I was 20 years old again and was able to go and put more reps in and add weight training and add yoga on a more regular basis. So it just helped me adapt my fitness routine to a lot of other things. And man, I like to joke now that I'm kind of walking this fine line between exercising enough and getting, like super good performance out of it. And like, it's an unhealthy addiction. Like, I don't know that exercise could actually be an unhealthy addiction. And I think this is a really interesting topic to debate. And I would love to like have that back and forth, but it can consume you, man. Cause like there are days where I spend like 4 hours exercising, which is a lot, man. That's so much. I mean, when you're talking about the average American doesn't exercise for 30 minutes a day.
Yeah, most of my workouts take like an hour max. So
So you start throwing an hour of yoga, an hour walk, an hour of weight training, an hour of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and now you've just 4 hours of your day is consumed with something very physically fit at a high level.
well, I think, and like you said, we can do a whole nother podcast on that, brother. But you're not doing 4 hours straight, so
No, sir. No,
I
sir.
don't think the addiction. I don't think at that point it comes to addiction because I too like I want to go back to jujitsu very badly. And with running a business and scheduling and stuff, it's been hard. But fitness has always been a non-negotiable in my life. It's the first thing I do in the morning. And one thing you didn't know, because we didn't talk about this, I too lost all my weight from intermittent fasting. So I was on the what was called the lean gains method. I did the 12 and 8 hour fast for 12, eat for 8. I automatically, because I'm just conditioned to, I fast and I don't typically eat. I go to the gym in the morning and I work out, and I work out heavy and I push myself to the limit, and I've been fine. And I come home and I don't eat until like 12, 1, 2 o'clock. And I always tell people in my coaching and my training, when I'm looking at their nutrition, it's okay to enjoy snacks sometimes. It's okay to have, I love pizza is my downfall. If my wife always, laughs at me because I said if I could only have one meal for the rest of my life, it would be pizza. And then number two for me would be burgers.
Yeah.
So so when I coach somebody, I hate the term diet, right? Nutrition shouldn't be a struggle. It shouldn't be a burden. Um, and I always tell people the first thing is look at what you eat. It's the overconsumption that's killing us. It's the people that go to McDonald's and instead of ordering just a Big Mac, they order two Big Macs, two large Cokes, a large fry, an apple pie, and they go 3, 4 times a week. So automatically, when I have a client and I say, okay, be completely brutally honest with what you eat, I don't take food away. I just scale it back. And just by scaling it back after the first month, they've already lost so much weight, and then scale it back a little bit more and let people enjoy food, let people have food. That's the problem with these fad diets and these nutritions. And I learned one thing. I don't, for me, I don't use intermittent fasting per se as like a diet. It's a more spirituality thing. It's going without, it's sitting in silence, it's listening to God, the universe, whatever, you believe in, and not having to think about what I'm going to shove in my mouth hole every 2 hours, every 3 hours, every 4 hours. And it allows me to be more focused and concentrated. And that's why I fast. Now, initially, I did it for the weight loss. I didn't know what to do. I saw this magical thing. I was like, hey, basically, I'm just cutting my calories and I'm forcing myself to cut my calories.
It's the calories in, calories out thing,
Right.
right? Like that's at its most basic. It's like that's
Exactly.
easy to follow.
Exactly. And for a dum dum like me who doesn't want to count calories, I was like, shit, this is easy.
Yep.
So I love what you said. So the public listening, look, not you have to find what works for you. I am a big, huge proponent of lifting heavy ass weights and being as strong as possible because at 48, I can outlift most 20-year-olds with squats, deadlift, bench press. And it's not only like a savage intent, like, oh, I got to be strong. It's great for functionality and everything. But you have to find what works for you. If that's just walking, go for a fucking walk. The powers of walking, I saw Adam's pictures on his episode. It was amazing. The benefits alone, you don't have to do much. You just have to do some form of activity every day. You do a little bit of activity every day. You monitor a little bit of what you eat. And right there, you're going to make so much benefit, so much gain, so much change. And that's the problem, I think, in the fitness industry is people mind fuck everything. Like, oh, I got to do this diet, or I got to lift this weight, or I got to try this back flip while bench pressing dumbbells. And no, keep it fucking simple. Just keep it simple.
Not only that, but like these ads that target, like you can go from this, and I know for those listening, you can't see the picture of me that I showed Rob on my podcast, but you can go from this to this in 6 weeks if you follow my program. That's not real. It's bullshit.
Right.
It's a marketing gimmick. And you should probably stay away from that person as a trainer, because they're not going to have anything good for you. At least for me, where I gathered all the information is I started watching, how do people live to be 120 years old? So you start studying blue zones, and you find out that in Singapore, they have built their city so that it's walkable, literally, for every single citizen, no matter where you live in that city. And they have parks where people have, calisthenics and push-up bars and sit-up boards, kind of like what you're used to seeing around a military installation. And they talk about, like, just about every single person in that society hits their 10,000 steps a day. So I started doing the math, and I was like, man, if I walk at a normal pace, 10,000 steps a day comes out to right about 4 miles for the average person. I know what my target is now. If I just walk 10,000 steps every single day, I'm doing something that is going to increase my longevity. It's science. It's proven, because they've studied the 7 major blue zones across the globe. And all of these people have that one thing in common.
That's amazing. And that's the power of fitness. So before we get close to closing out the show, how important would you say fitness is to veterans who have injuries or mental health issues?
I think it's everything, man. The more and more I have this conversation, I think it should be the number one priority you have in your life. Like Rob says, it's a non-negotiable for me. I would say most days you're always going to have down days. You do still need to rest and recover. I'm a firm believer in that.
Definitely.
But it doesn't need to be structured. So I've had months where I walk every single day, all 31 days of the month. And I've had months where I might only walk 15 days out of the month, because that's what my body says that it wants. Or, I have other things going on. And, plus I've added so much other fitness into my life. It's okay if I miss one of those things one day and whatever, or take an entire day off. And so I really think that it's the most important thing. And I think that for a lot of reasons. I think because just the cortisol dump that you get from exercising improves your mental health. That's science. It's been studied. It's been peer reviewed. And we know that to be a fact. You can't argue with the physical results when you look in the mirror. Dude, I'm 40 years old and I'm leaner and more muscular than I've ever been in my entire life, to include high school, being an Army infantryman. I'm more jacked than I've ever been, and I'm lighter at more jacked than I've ever been. So I think there's, the visual kind of cues that you get. It's not hard when you're overweight to see dramatic change and results from the steps that you're taking to get the goal that you want. It does get a little bit harder and more frustrating now. I just had this conversation this morning. I'm back and forth understanding the mental trap that the scale is. But I also just had hip surgery, so I'm trying to track how much muscle I lost while I was recovering and all of that. So, I lost 4 pounds of lean muscle through the surgery, and I got back on the scale, and the scale's going back up. And I have to understand, muscle weighs more than fat. I'm not in danger of getting to 320 pounds again because I lift heavy ass weights now. So it's natural that the number on the scale is going to increase. So I really just, man, it's so important, because you get the mood boost, you get the attitude boost. It's good for your mental health. It's good for your physical health. It's challenging and you don't want to do it. And if you do that, like, to steal from Joe Rogan, if you do something hard first thing when you wake up, it makes any other task that you do the rest of the day that much easier. And so, I mean, that's like, what, 5 benefits I've just given you? Like, and we could probably go on and on and on and on and on. I mean, there's camaraderie. You make friends at the gym because you're around like-minded individuals. I know at first you probably don't want to be there, but it becomes something that you absolutely crave and want and need. I just spent the last month bitching to my wife about, I can't go to the gym. I want to go to the gym. This is miserable. I hate this. Like, it just becomes something that you crave. And now you're around like-minded people who are just like you, who are there to improve their overall, I would say, more than just physical fitness. I would say their overall holistic fitness.
Yes. So I don't know about you, but for me, it actually helped reverse some of my injuries. Now, obviously, I still have a bad back. I still have bad knees. But focusing on the heavy lifting, I was able to, I guess, stave away most of the pain and actually heal more, opposed to being injured. And I think that's what I'm trying to get more vets to do, is move, because I think we think, oh, I'm injured, I can't do anything. And the more you start working out, the more you start packing on that muscle, the more you start losing weight, your injuries start to subside a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that, man. Again, results may vary just based on kind of your injuries and all of that. I've had 4 major surgeries in the last 3 years. So I can speak to, even before this hip surgery, I had, we thought a torn labrum. Turns out the labrum had calcified and turned to bone. So essentially I was bone on bone in my hip, which explains a lot of my pain. However, when I was in the gym lifting heavy, that was the only time I wasn't thinking or registering the pain in my brain. So I can agree to that, but I also, to be fair to those that are listening, I may not be in the same place that you're at yet because I'm still taking care of stuff that requires surgical intervention to alleviate the pain.
Yeah, so let me make a blanket statement so no one sues me. Do what you can do, okay? Like don't
Exactly right.
don't like I have a torn rotator cuff. I'm gonna bench press 225 pounds. I'm not saying that, but you may with some push-ups, you may start with some light dumbbell presses. And if you need guidance, obviously you can reach out to me. We can do that, but don't go. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to heal from my injuries because Coach Rob said so. I don't need to get sued right now, so please.
Yeah, I'm going to double down on that and say, hey, I'm Adam Peters, and my thoughts and opinions are my own. I just share my story to inspire you to figure out what works for you.
Crap, man. Every time I talk to a veteran, I might have to start putting out blanket statements.
Right.
Before we go and we end the show, I always like to ask my guests, what's your definition of turning pain into progress?
Ooh, man, that's a good one. I would say, man, to turning pain into progress, what is my definition? I would say, man, like it's pain is a fact of life, and it's just there. So either you learn how to leverage it and grow, or you don't, and you stay right where you're at and you live a miserable fucking life. I really, I mean, it's just a part of life, man. Like, just because I've had all these really cool epiphanies and done all this work on myself doesn't mean that there's not pain in all areas of my life, from relationships to business to physical pain to mental pain. It doesn't mean that I don't struggle or I'm a perfect human being. It just means that I've learned how to take that pain and focus it into something that's going to allow me to grow. And in that, I am a firm believer the best growth comes on the other side of extremely painful challenges. It's just, there's no other way, man. Some of the people that I look up to, the people that I model myself after to become what my definition of success is, all have incredible, uncomfortable, painful journeys that we can all learn from. And I think the proof is in the pudding. If you start looking at successful people beyond surface level social media, really look at their stories, you'll see it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and they usually went through something pretty painful.
Definitely. Where can they find you at, Adam, and connect with you? Where's your biggest platforms?
LinkedIn, man. Find me at LinkedIn, Adam Peters. There to unfuck your transition. thestrategicveteran.com. Those are the 2 best places. The website has links to the podcast. It has links to the newsletter. It has links to the community. And then for those that are curious about the ayahuasca retreat, Amakaya, AMAKAYA.org. Everything there is extremely relevant except for the pricing. Ignore the pricing if you're a veteran, first responder, or the family member of one of those 2, and then reach out to me directly. You can do that through the website or through LinkedIn or various other ways.
All right, guys. My guest has been Adam Peters. This has been an awesome conversation. I'm Coach Rob. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this with a veteran because that's the community we want to heal. Now, obviously, this podcast is for everybody, but if you know a veteran that needs to hear this, tell them, look, you need to listen to this. I think this will help you out. We'll have all Adam's links in the show description on the YouTube, as usual, when I promote my guests. And as I like to say, turn your pain into progress and always be fit for battle. Thank you.
You've just heard another battle-tested conversation. Now it's time to take action. If this episode lit a fire in you, subscribe on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, or YouTube so you never miss a moment that could change your life. Want to go deeper? Connect with Coach Rob at BattleFittedBrain.com for coaching, gear, and tools to help you turn your pain into progress. Remember, life will test you, but you're built to battle harder. Until next time, stay locked in, stay ready, and keep showing up.